Hi there, everyone. Welcome to Subconscious Sundays. I am your co-host, Reverend April Kling, and with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Timothy Freeman. How you doing, Tim?
Hi, good. Thanks. Great to be here. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. Whoo, buddy. Today's today's topic: facing your fears, taming your triggers. And Tim knows why I'm chuckling. Tim knows why I'm chuckling because, well, let you tell me why you think I'm chuckling.
Well, as we've mentioned, we we like to tackle topics that are challenging, right? Big
Hmm.
topics, big bad topics sometimes. What bigger, badder topic than fear, really? But ultimately, what it happens is we invoke these topics into our lives. It's like, okay, you want to talk about fear? Let's give you something to talk about this week.
So, yes, these topics tend to manifest in ways in our lives that make us experts, um, ad hoc, ad
Or,
hoc
or or
experts.
at least, a fellow human being, like, definitely treading the path of what we're talking about. We'll call it
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we're going through it. We're going through the fears. We're facing our triggers, and we're here to talk to you about this today. Before we go too much further, it's time to set intentions. And as always, we're here to discuss fun in a way that is fun and entertaining and laid back, potentially serious and heavy topics, as Tim mentioned just a moment ago. And we aim to be open and inviting and welcoming to those of you who have questions or ideas to respectfully bring those into the conversation. And the way to do that while we're live is to put live comments into the little place where it asks you to do that on
Yeah,
whatever
and
platform you're
we
on.
we really love to hear from all you guys. And thanks to those who contribute in our past shows. And don't be shy. We love to hear
Don't be
from
shy.
you.
We love it to be
Um,
lively. The lively ones are the most fun.
yeah, and because this is one reason this is important to us, and another intention that we set here is that this is a weekly ritual to gather our shared communities here in a virtual sacred space where we can share our knowledge and talk about some of these things that don't often get airplay. Uh, like this in our lives.
Right. And our core values are to be respectful of everyone's individual journey, yours and ours alike, rooted in compassion for ourselves and others, promoting growth and expansion, and creating a supportive community, which we would not have without you. So thanks for joining us. Um, all right. Without further ado, let's talk about fears and triggers, Timothy.
Well, and we, we had to include, fear's big. It's fundamental, but so we
Hmm.
had to also kind of ground it in taming triggers because that's how we kind of know like we're afraid, right?
Yeah.
So I know I'm really excited about what you have been exploring on this. So share with us.
Yes, definitely. Well, the topic, the lunchtime poll, as we call it, question was, what is your strategy for dealing with fear? How well does this strategy come into effect when you're emotionally triggered? So, not the liveliest question I've ever done, not the liveliest poll I've ever done, but we got some good responses, some really solid responses. And even though I always ask people to be brief, we got a lot of longies this time. It's a big thing to talk about. So I don't mind having a bit of a lengthier response, and you'll see in the novels that I have published in the captions today. Linda simply said, though, ignore it. And now I know Linda to be a very wise and very spiritual woman. So I think that this response from her is an admission of it's like an honest admission that she tends to just brush this stuff aside, which I think is important to mention here because I think that's honestly what we do with our fears and our triggers is we just kind of ignore. Well, we ignore our fears and then we get triggered. I think that's really what's going on here. So I think that's a little teaser of what I'm going to be talking about today. But I'm glad that Linda said that because I mean it's honest. So Jill says, fight or flight varies by major event, minor fears and phobias. My family members make fun of my little songs I have when I'm crossing a bridge or encountering a lizard. I've known of Jill's famous fear of lizards for years. I don't understand it, but I've been respectful of this fear for many years. She says, I have an anxiety disorder. I would say my strategies are well practiced. So when Jill mentioned the anxiety disorder, it was like, aha, it was like a light bulb moment for me because anxiety is something we need to bring into the conversation. And I hadn't thought about that, which was kind of silly of me, really. But now we're talking about it. It's in the field, as they say. Elaine says, typically my first thought is to assess what is in my control and what isn't. That's important. So, for example, when I tell my daughter I love her, when I say goodbye because I can't control a school shooter, for example, I can control my last words to her. Then I assess whether my fear of what I can't control is rational or probable. If it is, and I'm still feeling fear, I pray and I give the situation to God. So Elaine is a spiritual leader. She's somebody who is a spiritual, professional spiritual practitioner. And I mentioned to her that reminded me of the serenity prayer, which you're familiar with that, Tim, right? God
I
grant
think
me
so.
the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's really popular among people who've gone through 12
Yeah.
or Alcoholics Anonymous or Nar-Anon, that sort
I
of
just
thing.
want to also thank Elaine for this answer here. It's like, she really concentrated a big answer in a short space here. And I appreciate everything you said, Elaine.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, definitely. She knows what she's talking about. She's good at this stuff. Meredith, I really like Meredith's answer, and I think you will too, because we're both really outdoorsy, which is something I don't know that we've ever mentioned on the show, that you and I are like way outdoorsy, way outdoorsy. Not as outdoorsy as Meredith, but we're super outdoorsy.
We'd
Um,
probably rather be doing this show outside, but
yeah.
inside's okay too.
Yeah, I need a tattoo or a t-shirt or a bumper sticker that says I would rather be hiking. I just took an excellent course in fear management in climbing. Mountain climbing is what she's referring to. And it was also super applicable to other situations. It had really good discussions of zones of stress and how it's good to push yourself into a stretch zone, but not so far that it becomes overwhelming. By doing this, you grow and your stress zone boundaries move. You gently shift your comfort zone without developing panic. Oh, kind of
Okay.
feels like
I
this is
love
something you
this.
could do in hypnosis.
Well, well, yeah, you're right. I mean, and this is the kind of thing we do with hypnosis. We deal with a lot of fear with hypnosis, as you can imagine. But this really kind of hits home for me. Recently, I was um, summiting this mountain. That sounds really hardcore. It was not that hard of an approach. I mean, it's still like summiting a mountain, so we're
Yeah, I
working
did that the other day
working
too,
for it.
and it doesn't seem like that big a deal to me either. But to someone listening, it's like, oh, well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I live in Ireland,
But
you live in
it,
Hawaii, and the mountains are kind of, they're
yeah.
hilly.
Well, I was actually in Montana here, and it was one that we've always
Oh,
looked at and said, okay, we're going to go to the top of that, and we did. Um, but I'll tell you what, though, fear really set in for me, it to the point where I'm up there at the top, like on all fours, like clinging to the earth with like my whole body as much as I could, and like standing up straight at a certain point was like I had to really do some fear management in that moment. So
right,
can
right.
appreciate that.
James just jumped in to say that when he has a garden, he's going to be watching all his future episodes. And
Haha, nice.
we tend to do our seasons in the summer, so that'll work out for you just very well. And Tim, I recall a specific time when you and I were like doing a bit of like, I would say almost vertical hiking in New Mexico together. And we had to slide down on our rear ends on the gravel.
Yeah, yeah.
because we were just like, we're not going to even be able to do this upright. Um, yeah, talk about stretching our comfort zone and shifting our zone of fear. Wow. Emma says mindfulness practices, which we're going to talk about quite a bit today. They work pretty well in general, focusing on the breath. Breathing exercises such as box breathing or prolonged exhale. I just want to stop here and say box breathing is 4-second inhale, 4-second hold the breath, 4-second exhale, full 4-second hold the breath out. So it's what she's referring to as box breathing. It's and it doesn't have to be 4 seconds. It could be 8. I mean, the idea is that you kind of like stretch your zone of fear with box breathing even. So that's a really excellent exercise actually. And the 5 senses exercise, like which is what she mentions here, is like going, like taking a tally of your 5 senses. Like, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I feel? What do I hear? And it helps you stay present. So that's a good one too. She says also just focusing on the sense of touch, just that alone can bring my attention from outward to inward if that is the problem. These things work even better when I meditate on a regular basis. That is so interesting. That is just thank you, Emma. Thank you, thank you. So Meredith chimed in again and she said it also really focused on the mindfulness of the body, referring back to what she was saying earlier. Learning to recognize internal symptoms of stress to be more aware of when you're entering a stretch zone. And then James, our very dear James, who's with us today live, once I realized I try to sit and listen to it, I asked the fear to tell me more. We'll be talking about that in a second. Often it's my inner child wound, being unsafe or feeling small, and maybe I write it out, talk to it back, bring it into the present where I'm safe, etc., etc. I'm definitely going to be teasing that one out a little bit, James. Thanks for your comment. Yeah, so here's what I got to say about fear. Fear is an incredibly potent, powerful energy. Within your fear, and this is something that I'm not going to say anything you've never heard before, and I just want to really drive this point home. If you've heard it before, if you've never heard it before, I'd love to be the first person to tell you this, but within your fear is all of the answers for how to get what it is you want. And fear contains the energy of fear, contains all the power that you can possibly muster to make your purpose move forward. And it seems paradoxical, and you will find, and I will say this 1,000 times if you exist around me for any length of time, that within the paradox is the power. Like within the paradox is the energy. Fear is one of those blissful little paradoxes if you're willing to harness it, to get a massive amount of power and energy to move your life forward. There are generally 2 different families of information that you can divine from engaging with your fear and asking your fear the right questions and treating it with curiosity, in safety, and in comfort. Those 2 things you can learn about fear are, what is it that I want? And what is it that I need to heal? What is it that I want is about like fear of the future. It's the ways in which you project yourself into the future. That encompasses anxiety. Now, fear being like, what is it you need to heal? It's the way you project yourself into the past. It's the things that kind of bring you down and get you depressed. So when you're in that engagement with fear in safety and in the present moment, and you're able to ask yourself really curious questions about your fears, you can form those questions, and you can form that curiosity around that line of thinking, and it can change your life. So, for example, sometimes fear is going to teach us, I mean, this seems sort of obvious, but sometimes fear teaches us what we don't want. So if we're afraid of something happening to us in the future, obviously that's going to point to something that we don't want. But encased in what we don't want is often something that we do want. So typically that's going to be the opposite of what we don't want, but not always. Because the funny thing about fear is sometimes what we fear is what we do want. And I would say that fear of loss is usually an indicator of that. Like, I want this thing, but I'm afraid of losing it. And I'm going to self sabotage that because I feel like I either don't deserve it or I don't want to deal with the grief and the loss of losing it. So ask yourself those questions. Is this fear of something I want, or is this fear of something I don't want? And then you can find out what it is that you want and really get in touch with your desire. And I know this sounds like, duh, April, but the truth is that generally speaking, and with very little exception, all of the work I'm doing in my ministry right now is around getting people in touch with what it is they actually want. This is also true in my personal life and in my relationships right now, and in incredibly painful and potent ways. There's so much disconnection due to the wounds that we have from what it is that we actually want. Some people don't feel safe to want. People who are attracted to Buddhism are typically those people who are afraid of their desires, because when they hear that desire is the thing that we have to ward off in our lives, that resonates, because that means that they don't ever have to fear grief or loss ever again. I know that sounds really mean, but it's true from what I have experienced. So that's why I encourage people
Well,
to engage differently with what they desire and treat it like a curiosity rather than something we identify with. It sounds like you have something to say, so I'm going to take a break here and let
well,
you
no, I
engage
just
there.
I think that there's something really potent there.
Yeah.
Fear is a powerful teacher, and if we, anyway, you've got a lot more to say. I want to let you keep going there, but I don't think you should dismiss that point you just made, as
Mm-mm.
it's important.
No. I mean, we talked about this in the previous episode, but I just want to reiterate what it is we want. There's nothing wrong with wanting things. There's nothing wrong with desire. The wrongness, if you want to go there, and I'm not really a big believer in right and wrong, but the wrongness is when we identify with it and we treat it as the objective and we treat it as the outcome, and we get attached and we get really attached. If we're able to like engage with our desires a little bit more loosely, treat it as something that carves our path, et cetera, et cetera. Watch the previous episode. I digress. But that is a perfect segue into what I want to say about fear having something to teach us about our past, fear teaching us something what we need to heal. And the test for this is a magic word known as again. You ask yourself, am I afraid of this happening again? Am I afraid of getting rejected again? Am I afraid of losing my job again? And if the answer is yes, then it's a wound that you need to look at and heal that is still festering. The reason I mention a job and the reason I've already mentioned relationships is because these are the common most crucibles for the ways in families, like which falls under relationships, but these are the common crucibles that we deal with on a daily basis. And those
Yeah, when
crucibles
I would add a third too. We got relationships, livelihood, and health.
and health. Oh my gosh. Yes, Tim. Yes. Thank you. Am I afraid of getting sick again? Perfect. So use that magic word again. So going back to the example of like fearing the thing that you want, sometimes encased in your fear of losing your job is the realization that you don't like your job at all and you actually want out of it. And then you have to look at the fear, oh, am I afraid of losing my job again? Because you've lost your job in the past. And you have that like insecurity of where your next income is going to come from and that sort of thing. So engage with that, be real with that. And what some of those commenters have said in the question on Facebook this week are really key to, like, such as what Elaine said about asking if this is rational, asking if this is like really something that I need to worry about, or what I can control, what I can't control. Um, if we're able to ask the right questions of our fear, I feel like that eliminates the possibility of us being triggered quite so much. Like eliminating maybe not so much, but reduces as
Mhm.
like,
I just want to add something really quickly here, April, because I think
yeah.
this lines up with what a kind of a conceptual framework behind some of the work that I do with
Hmm.
emotions. I kind of have come to believe that all emotions are good when they're based on accurate perception, but a lot of times it's a misperception that is at the root of the problem. And so with fear, the first step is really kind of like this reality check. Like,
Hmm.
the thought that might precede fear is something bad is going to happen, something along those lines, right? But then the first step is a little bit of a reality check. Like, is this an actual threat? Is this an actual danger? Right? And if it's
Hmm.
not, if our conscious mind, if consciously we can answer that question and say, no, it's not an actual threat, that really can like just immediately like reduce the charge of the fear. But
Right,
there's
exactly.
oftentimes a reality to the fear there, a real threat that we feel that we need to address.
And then there's also the question of manageability. Like, if this were to happen, how would I manage it?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
also, in the case of self-sabotage, I'll give it a recent example from, like, something that I've observed in my personal life. Sabotaging a relationship because you're afraid of losing that person. Like, breaking up because you're afraid of them breaking up with you, or ending the relationship early because you're afraid of, like, conflicts that are gonna arise in the future. That's an example of being afraid of, like, what you don't want. But also maybe, and you should really ask yourself these questions, do you really actually wanna be in that relationship? Like, maybe it's your little, like, escape hatch, is the fears that you have of something happening in the future is just coming up because you really don't wanna be in that relationship in the present. But more often than not, and I think in the example that I'm referring to, Tim, you know the example I'm referring to, but I'm more often than not, it's really just an example of a wound that just has not healed. Like, I don't want this to happen again. Like, this has happened
Sure.
to me in the past, I don't want it to happen to me again, is really what that's about, because being
Right.
afraid of something that hasn't happened yet is usually an indicator that it already has. Is it happening now, or has it happened in the past? Now, as far as avoiding those types of, self-sabotage and that sort of thing, let's talk about triggers, because triggers are kind of how we self-sabotage. Is how we deal with those, and that is the practical day-to-day life way we engage with fear. So, talking about triggers, I want to talk about the retreat I just got back from, put on by Katie O'Mahony, a fantastic medicine woman and shaman here in Ireland. She taught us a lot about our responses to triggers. And we did a lot of really fantastic psychodrama around this. And we talked about the four responses to a trigger, which are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. I actually had the tremendous pleasure of explaining to Tim earlier what fawning is, and I'll do it again in a moment. But fight, flight, or freeze, or fight or flight, or something are pretty common, but a lot of people don't know more about. A lot of people need to know more about fawning, and I'll go into that in a minute. But fight, when it is we want to have a conflict, a live conflict with somebody, indicates a disconnection from that person. It indicates that the ego has entered the chat. It indicates that we are in dynamic with that person as an illusion and a projection. So fighting is really just taking that moment of triggering and holding up a mirror to yourself and fighting with yourself. We are All of our illusions are projected onto that person. So that's fight. Disconnection from others. Flight is obviously running away from your problems, cut bait and run, that sort of stuff. breaking up with somebody preemptively, quitting your job because you're afraid of getting laid off, flight, disconnection from the self. When we're in flight and we're running away and we're exiting and we're looking for the exit and we're not facing the problems. We are simply delaying the inevitable having to face the problems. And that is a disconnection from the self. It is an unwillingness to face our fears. Freeze, disconnection from the body. It means that our entire body has shut down. We are no longer able to react with our body. This typically appears with people who have experienced physical trauma, such as abuse of a physical or sexual nature, and any type of trauma to the body, such as like injury or illness. Freeze is a typical response. Disconnection from the body. Fawning, which I will now explain what it is basically ass kissing to get out of conflict. It's when you are with somebody that you don't know that well, like maybe your boss or somebody that you're dating that you aren't really super intimate with. And they say, I don't know where I want to eat. And, where are we going to eat? And you say something like, oh, for lunch, whatever you want. That's a very minor example of fawning, but major examples of fawning are like Stockholm syndrome, when somebody is imprisoning you, harming you, keeping you, away from the outside world or something, and you basically become identified with them and start to sympathize with them. Fawning can also be just being, constantly a yes person, yes man, yes woman to somebody that you see as your authority figure. It also takes the shape of like the golden child in a relationship with parents and children, where there's like somewhat of a narcissistic or unhealthy parenting going on, and they designate one child to be like the golden child who identifies with the idea of being perfect and always is fawning with that parent, like kissing that parent's butt and making sure that that parent always feels good, and doing the parenting of the parent is also a way that fawn can present itself. That is a disconnection from what we desire. And because all of those dynamics I just mentioned in fawning are so prevalent today, like a lot of us were raised by narcissistic parents, a lot of us were forced to deal with parents in ways that were reparenting our parents instead of them reparenting themselves and stuff like that. Because that is so pervasive, fawning is actually a pretty typical American response to conflict, by the way. Like this idea of like, oh my God, you're so amazing. It's like stereotypical amazing American response to someone who they feel intimidated by, or somebody who they fear. So watch out for that. So what those indicate are disconnections from the self in different manifestations. So how do we address that? Disconnection from others in the flight response. We need to dive further into intimacy. We need to really address connection in our lives with other people. With flight and that disconnection from the self, there's a way to address that too. Hypnotherapy, talk therapy, and meditation was mentioned by Emma earlier. Those are ways that you can really connect to the self and really get it out of that dynamic of having to run away from all your problems. Freeze, disconnection from the body. Again, meditation's great here, especially meditations that involve embodiment. And I think Bear's watching. She's been very quiet, but if she is, yoga is a fantastic way of getting reconnected to the body, as is physical exercise, anything that gets you out in nature, hiking, walking, or playing a sport. And then fawning, disconnection from what we desire. I think it's really important to acknowledge the times when we're in a conflict dynamic with somebody that we look up to, or somebody that who we feel is an authority over us or is superior to us. We need to get in touch with what it is about that person that we want. What is like do we want that authority? Do we want that position of power? Do we want greater sovereignty in our lives? These will help us get at that fawn response and treat people more equitably, and also get out of the transactional nature of relationships. Because I don't know if you've noticed, Tim, but transactionality in our relationships, we might do an episode on this. Transactionality in relationships has become like so common, it's considered normal, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah,
That's all
that's
I got to say about
really, yeah, that's it. Well, moreover, I really appreciate how, I don't think you could have come to these insights about our triggers and our responses to fear and where the disconnection lies here. Um, it's it's really apt. It feels really true to me. I don't think you could have come to these insights without having done some level of uh, like connection to the subconscious, right?
that.
Um,
Yeah,
because our thinking mind, and I think this really gets at the kernel of fear. Like if there's any emotion can overload our nervous system in
yeah,
excess, right?
it's normal. It's human.
Fear is one of those that has got like a direct connection to the to overwhelm of our nervous system, I think. And
Yeah,
that's why we talk about these more physiological type of responses and triggers like the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses. And I encountered recently some new research that points to fear management being neurologically, like being managed somewhat in the cerebellum, which was
hmm,
previously known for, some cognitive function, but a lot of motor function. So this is a really, all that to say, this is a really base level foundational emotion. Some would say fear is at the root of all other emotions to some extent, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Um, so it's really easy for fear to overwhelm our nervous system is my point. And that's where we get this fight, flight, freeze. But and then when we're in those states, our thinking mind is virtually like gone. We've lost our power in that moment and to some extent. So the more we can foster, this is like the mantra of every week here, the more we can foster a deeper connection between our conscious thinking mind, the more we can quiet our conscious thinking mind to pay more attention to those deeper parts of ourselves and foster that connection between our conscious and our subconscious and maybe even our unconscious mind, which we think of as our body's consciousness, the more our responses are automatically modulated in the moment. So James asks, so I wonder what are good practices to increase our inner self power, wholeness, strength that then give you the resources to feel strong in a fear moment? Well, it's root, it's foundational.
Hmm.
We're gonna get that trigger response a lot of the time, but I think, and this has been borne out from me in my experience, is that the more we are in practice with connecting to those deeper parts of ourselves, that is really kind of the only thing we can do to really manage it in the moment,
Yeah,
right? Like
heading it
that's the
off in the
best thing we can
past.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah. But there's this cognitive thing that you brought into the picture a little bit that I think is really good for us to remember. It's like, what are we disconnected from in each of these responses? And it's going to be probably impossible for us to consciously think of this in that moment, but maybe not if this sinks in to some deeper level for you. It certainly does for me.
yeah.
When I freeze, it's a disconnection for myself in some way. Did I get that right, April?
Freeze is a disconnection from the body.
From the body. Okay, thank you.
Flight
Thank you.
is
See, I
disconnection from the self.
yeah, there we go. There we go. Um, so, in retrospect, I think this is really helpful. In the moment, I think the more we can cultivate this calm nervous system and connection to the deeper parts of ourselves, the more we're able to witness these responses and maybe even bring back up what April had shared with us here. I hope
Yeah.
to,
Hmm.
in fear
Me too.
moments.
Me too.
So,
You know, you said witness these. Once you start to really practice this stuff for yourself, you'll see it with other people too. It really helps generate compassion for those people. I've seen that like so prevalently lately. Like
hmm,
feeling the compassion for the way that people interact with their own fear when you understand your own fears is
hmm,
so interesting. This also helps you stay um, grounded when you are dealing with your own triggers by other people, because you can be compassionate with the ways in which they're triggered, or you can also say, okay, my interactions with this person are triggering something in me. So when
hmm.
you're able to witness this in yourself and practice it, you're able to witness it in others and practice it too.
Sure. Yeah, that's really helpful. And then, what comes to mind for me too is this is largely below the conscious mind a lot of
Yep.
times, especially when
Mhm.
we're talking about triggers, because if we've had a strong fear response in the past, the subconscious mind is so associative that anything that pops up in our experience in the future that sort of resonates with that original experience can kick off the fear response in our bodies. And that's trauma, right? That's PTSD at the far end of the spectrum, right? So
Mhm.
again, cultivating that connection, cultivating that calm nervous system and that connection to the deeper parts of ourselves gives us the greater resources to respond in a better way in that moment, even if the trigger's there and even if our body is, our nervous system is triggered by it
Mhm.
into one of these responses.
Right. Well, I think that we should start practicing right now. What do you
Sounds
think?
good.
All
That
right.
sounds great. We've got a fairly short hypnotic meditation for you guys today. And if you'd like to participate with us in this hypnotic meditation today, just find a spot, or excuse me, find a comfortable place where you can rest undisturbed for the next several minutes. Know that hopefully, you're in an environment where you can know that you're safe to just relax fully, relax your mind, relax your body, and just a little rejuvenation at the end of the week or the beginning of the week, whatever your perspective. So as you're settling in to a comfortable and safe position, just go ahead and feel the sense of gravity holding you to wherever you're seated or lying down. Maybe take off your glasses, uncross your legs, uncross your arms. Now take in a deep breath. And as you exhale, release all tension in your head, neck, and shoulders. Just let it flow out with that exhalation. Taking another deep breath. When you exhale, it's long, slow exhalation. Just release any tension in your shoulders, torso, abdomen. Sending a slow wave of relaxation from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet with each breath. Breathe in again. And as you exhale, just let go of any tension in your hips, your legs, knees, all the way down to your feet. Just let your body hang out in gravity as relaxed as possible. And if you still have your eyes open, go ahead and find a spot on the wall or the ceiling that's above your natural eye gaze. Something like this. You're looking up slightly with your eyes and taking a deep breath. As you do, focus in on a specific spot. Really focus on it. And as you exhale, look through that spot. Maybe noticing the corners of the room, engaging your peripheral vision, and whenever you're ready, close your eyes. And relax your jaw. As you do, this is helping to send a signal to your entire body, every muscle, nerve, and cell in your body, that now is the time to relax. This is a series of techniques that can help you calm your nervous system on demand. It can be very helpful in fear moments. Relaxing your jaw, good. Release any tension, just drop it. And gradually slow down your rate of breathing. Get into a slow, really comfortable rate of breathing with a really long exhalation. One of our commenters mentioned this, very useful. With a long exhalation, you're able to send another wave of relaxation all the way from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. 1, 2, 3. Good. Now relax the back of your tongue. As you do, see how relaxed you can get this part of your body. You're decoupling this part of your body from the part of your mind preparing to speak. There is nothing for you to do right now, nothing for you to say right now. Now is the time just for you to relax and restore your nervous system. Good. And drop your consciousness into your heart now, whatever that means to you. Often we think about the seat of our consciousness behind our eyes somewhere in there in our head. Drop the seat of your consciousness down into your heart. And whatever you're experiencing right now is just right. Good. Now take your attention again to that feeling of gravity supporting you. And as you do, it helps you send your awareness down, down, deeper, deeper into the earth. Down, grounded and supported all the way to the very center of the earth, making a direct connection. And as that awareness fades, you go even more deeply and even more comfortably relaxed, grateful for the support that you feel. And as you take in another deep breath, breathe up some of that grounded, stable, nurturing, supportive energy from the earth all the way through your body. Take it up through the top of your head, up into the center of the universe, into the heavens, up to the highest point you like, to the very center of the universe. And as you do, call in your helpers, whatever that means to you. Maybe they're spiritual allies, maybe some loved ones. You feel their presence with you now. Call in that loving, supportive energy that can always be there for you when you need some inspiration. As you take a deep and slow breath out, bring down some of that energy of clarity and inspiration down back into your body, and let these two energies commingle in this balance point that is your heart. This divine energy of clarity and inspiration, heavenly energy, and this nurturing, grounded, supportive energy of the earth. Both just commingling right now comfortably in the very center of you, in your heart. Good. Now I'd like you to bring to mind something which causes a fear response for you. Whatever pops up right now is exactly right. What is that thing that comes to mind that causes a fear response in you? Now imagine yourself having this fear response. Now that you're in this receptive, slowed down state of mind, you're able to easily notice how you react. Do you fight? Do you flee? Do you freeze? Do you fawn? What's happening there? What's sort of your default response to this fear? Whatever it is, you might consider now what you're disconnected from. Just taking another deep breath now. And as you exhale, I want you to exhale out that fear response. Just breathe the whole response right out of your whole system. Really long exhalation, cleansing, long exhalation. With a little bit of objectivity now, there's two questions that become really important from this situation that causes a fear response for you. You might ask of this response what it's showing you that you actually want. It might be obvious to you what you don't want. But what is it showing you that you actually do want? When we can move towards what we do want, as opposed to moving away from what we don't want, we can become even more empowered and effective. And here's another question. What is this fear response telling you that you possibly need to heal in yourself? Whatever comes up for you right now is exactly right. Just take a moment of silence. Calm nervous system, open and receptive heart, comfortable, slow rate of breathing. You're here safe, comfortable, nothing to do right now. Just a moment of silence to consider these questions. You might feel little pockets of tension cropping up somewhere in your body. Just allow any bit of tension to dissolve with each natural breath you exhale. It's a continuous unfolding process of relaxation and release. In a moment, I'm going to count to 3, and you'll become aware of your body in space, in the room you're in, on whatever you're seated or lying down on, even more directly. 1, 2, coming back into your body now, and 3, feeling relaxed, safe, secure. Taking a deep breath. And as you exhale, exhale any last bit of tension lingering anywhere in your body. Maybe your abdomen, your shoulders. I'm going to count to 3 one more time, and you'll emerge from this hypnotic meditation feeling better than when we started, and like you've learned something about your own fear responses. 1, starting to just slightly wiggle those toes and fingers. 2, becoming aware of the sensation of the air on your skin. And 3, opening your eyes, emerging from this restorative meditation, feeling great. And thanks for joining us for this hypnotic meditation.
So I definitely went into this one, felt like I needed it more than
Oh,
I
good.
ever have in my entire life.
Sometimes I feel like all we can do in this life is really just breathe. I don't know
Yeah,
if any of our viewers feel that way. So I just wanted
well
to kind of
said.
center in on that. And like I said, the more we engage in these types of practices, I've heard from some teachers and mentors who I deeply respect that there are no magic bullets, but if there were, what they might be, there might be two of them: meditation and exercise. And I think the benefit of both of those is really helping us calm our nervous system more often.
Thank you. Yes. Um, I normally wouldn't share something like this, but the only reason I feel like it's okay to do it right now is because I think it's in the field collectively. And when you took me through that meditation just now, what I realized what I want, like my desire, is connection and intimacy. And what I fear is neglect and abandonment. And what I need to heal are the ways that I've been neglected and abandoned before. And I say this as a practitioner. These are things I have to deal with my clients, and they're things I have to deal with in my life. So normally I wouldn't like bring something like that into the space about my personal life, but the truth is I think it's so universal that if I didn't say it aloud, that I would be doing myself and others a disservice. And what can we say about all of that is that we can lean into one thing or the other. Do we want to lean into the fear of neglect and abandonment? We know that's going to result in neglect and abandonment. Either our neglect and abandonment of who it is we're afraid is going to neglect and abandon us, or it's going to result in that person neglecting and abandoning us. But what we want is connection and intimacy. We can lean into that. We can be honest. We can express ourselves. And if that doesn't feel safe or comfortable, you can come to a practitioner such as Tim and myself. If that's not available to you, you can go into the creative process and express your emotions in safety and clarity and comfort. So, on that note, the segue is to go into the description. Oh, thank you, James. It is okay to take big hugs. Thank you so much, James. And also, thank you to Tim. Hadn't given myself time to release, feel that fond response, and so thank you. Really feeling good. All right. What I want to say though before we sign off today is that we are here for you. In the description of every single video that we do, live or not, if you're watching the replay, go into the description. There is a link to meet with either one of us. And either one of those links will get you into the process of deciding what it is you really want and facing your fears. It's really at the core of what we do and what we offer. And it's really at the core of life. And we want to help you. We're here for you. If you want to work with both of us and get into that talk, that guidance, that spiritual journey accompaniment that you think that you can get from me, and you want to experiment with hypnosis and dive more deeply into the subconscious through that process, as well as bringing in dream work with the work that you do with me and that talking in that spiritual guidance process, these things bounce back and forth. We've had success with clients with this. So that's an option for you too. And in order to do that, you pick whichever one of those links you want to. And Tim and I will engage with you in that way and we can come up with a plan. But
And I might
what,
add to
yeah.
that either one of us can, if a lot of people experience fears and they might not even consciously know why, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
something that we deal with a lot, or they might not know why it's there, and it's really confusing. The conscious mind cannot figure it out, and that's where April and I can help you as well.
Not to mention the fact that I mentioned earlier that like it seems like the theme of this season is desire and our engagement with it. And there's such an epidemic of people not knowing what the heck they want. There's a way to figure out what you want. There's a way to figure out why you fear what you want or why you sabotage what it is that you want. There's a way to get to the bottom of that. And it's really the only way. It's through the subconscious. So don't be afraid to click a link. set up a free, no obligation time for yourself to chat with either one of us and get started on figuring yourself out, because now has never been a better time. The way that we see the world going is a direct correlation to the way we need to be dealing with ourselves and caring for ourselves and others. Don't be afraid. Click one of the links, set up a time for talk, and we'll create that safety and comfort for you to do that and secure. Be
Thank you
secure.
all for being here. Thank you, April. This was really insightful for me, what you have brought to this. So I am looking forward to using this new knowledge for myself throughout the week and the months to come. So thank you.
Thank you. And special thanks to Katie for leading us through such a fantastic process last week. Oh, we have one more comment I want to bring in before we go. My dear friend Red Squirrels, thank you for that. It felt like that was a cold shower question came from that. I have been triggered so much of late. My wrath is taking over my mercy. I was raised in a school of wrathful compassion. So what do you suggest? I say go into that inquiry. Um, go into that inquiry, Red Squirrels. Go into that inquiry of what it is you fear and why. And I know that, like, I know this person pretty well. There's conflict of interest for him working with me, but maybe work with Tim on some hypnosis. But we mentioned a few practices, if you go back into the episode, with fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, to go into the different practices where you can be embodied, where you can check in with yourself, and where you can experience intimacy. And I hope that helps. But thanks for your comment, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you,
Tim, I'll
James.
talk to
Thank
you in
you,
a second.
everybody.
Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
James, and
Okay.
thank you, Red Squirrels, whose real name I do know, but I'm not going to say. I love you. I love you all, and we'll see you next week. I've got a topic in mind, and I got to run it by Tim, but yeah, it's going to be good, and it's going to be absolutely a sequel to what we did today. So stay tuned. Thanks so much.
See you next week.